Good.
When did the first members of your family arrive in West Virginia?
Well, my ancestors came from Germany, and they spelled their name S-Y-T-Z-Z, and later on it was changed to S-I-T-E-S, and they arrived about that 1750 to 1800.
Why did the persons move?
Well, they were seeking a better way of life. Things were really tough for them in Germany, and they was trying to find a better way of life, so they came here.
Where did they settle?
Well, one of them went and settled near Chicago, and one settled down in Texas, and the other brother settled here near Petersburg. That's where my grandparents and my parents and everyone came from.
How did they make a living?
Well, there wasn't a lot of things like there are today in the factories and stuff, so most of these people spent their time raising animals and stuff to raise their families and stuff. When they concentrated a lot on animals and stuff. And the one that had a cattle ranch down near Austin, Texas, he got pretty well involved in cattle. But my grandfather, he worked a farm, logged and stuff up around here, around Petersburg.
What were some of the problems they faced?
Jodie, they had about the same type of problems that the frontier people faced out as they went west. The thing that was hard with them is that there was no close family ties to help one another, and they had none of the modern tools that we got today. Most of the stuff they had, it was real rough to.
If you can remember a long, long time ago, what changes have you seen in our town?
Well, I don't know what you're making reference to a long, long time ago, but when I was a small child, I remember going into Petersburg, and the streets were much different back then than they are today. And the store buildings and stuff have all been changed. And there's been tremendous changes from the old one-room schoolhouses that we knew to modern high school and gymnasiums and stuff. I remember the different gyms I played in, all of them have been changed. And even the changes in our water plants and our sewer plants and stuff, there's been quite a bit of change. Even the automobile parking in Petersburg, I faintly remember that you could see a place where you could tie a horse rack right not too far away from where you park your automobiles. And there's been a tremendous change in our hospitals, and the courthouses, our police, jails and stuff. Petersburg made, like other communities, made quite a bit of changes.
What were some of the things people did for fun when you were a child?
Well, today it seems like children spend a lot of time on wanting to have fun and to play, but you know, back then, when I got off from school, it was nothing to come home together in the wood and go get the milk cows and stuff. And as far as fun, when we wanted to go swim, we didn't have a swimming pool to go to. We had to go to a creek and swim in a creek, and sometimes we could get time off to go roller skating, and sometimes in the winter we'd go ice skating. But on Sunday, one of the most fun that we had was pitching horseshoe against family members and playing ball against family members.
What type of transportation did you use?
Well, our transportation was basically some of my parents used a horse and buggy. My grandparents did to get to church and to go to town and stuff. But as my parents came on, my dad got an old Model A, and we really thought he had a Cadillac. And then cars kept coming on, and the first thing you know, when I was in 12th grade, I bought me a Chevrolet convertible.
What type of stores did you have?
Well, there was only one store that we had that was close where it was at. It was an old country store, and you could just about buy everything you wanted in there. People would come in there and they would talk about the news and talk about politics and everything else. The old country store used to be like the old one-room schoolhouse. It's gone, and there's a lot of memories locked in with people that sat in those old stores and stuff. And if you wanted a piece of candy, sometimes your parents or your grandparents would buy it for you, or somebody would give you a piece of candy to keep you quiet while they talk It was an important part of our time.
Describe the toys you played with.
Jodie, we didn't have an awful lot of toys. Toys were something that I never spent much time with. Sometimes they made toys and gave to their children and stuff, but I remember I made me a bean shooter, and we'd shoot bow and arrows and stuff like that. But you know, it got to be a lot of fun with even the stuff we had. We still enjoyed it and had a good time with the things that we had, even though we didn't have much.
Describe your meals.
Well, meals for me of the morning, I had, Mom used to make oatmeal. I can well remember making oatmeal and gravy when I was in grade school, back in that one room, going to that one-room schoolhouse. As I kept getting older and going on to high school and stuff, our meals improved as their standard of living improved, and our meals really became an important part of our life. The thing that we look at today is children and their amount of vitamins and things that they're taking. And back then we never thought of vitamins and stuff because we just didn't have them. What we got from our meals, that's the vitamins we got.
What was your school like?
Well, the first school I went to was an old one-room schoolhouse. It's called Break Schoolhouse down here. And you went from the 1st to the 8th grade in it. Later on they changed that. And they put me when I was in the 6th grade over Johnson Run, and I was there. I had one teacher. Where over the other one-room schoolhouse, we just had one teacher for 8 grades. We had one teacher for just the 6th grade, and it was quite a change coming from an old one-room schoolhouse into where there was kids from all over and meeting from different areas of the county. And then from there, I went up to junior high, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, and then I went on to the 12th, 9th, or 10th, 11th, and 12th to the Petersburg High School.
What did your town look like?
Do what?
What did your town look like?
Well, it's hard to believe, but the town looked like a old western town back at that time. There was quite a few old buildings that hadn't been changed or taken down, and you would have thought maybe at one time when you went through the town that you was going back into time compared to today when you see it. And some of those old buildings and stuff were torn down, the floods tore them down, and people just remodeled and made new ones, but the town has made tremendous changes.
What type of music did you listen to?
There wasn't much. I remember my grandparents, before they had electricity, I used to stay with them, and every Saturday night I would get the old radio. It was a battery radio, and I'd get it hooked up and try to get it so they could listen to the Grand Ole Opry in Niceville. That's the only music they had. Time went on, and things, as I kept getting older, our music and stuff changed quite a bit. I guess Elvis Presley made one of the biggest changes in music that we had incorporated.
What type of sports were there?
Well, there wasn't an awful lot of sports. We had football, baseball, and skating and things like that. But when we was in that one-room schoolhouse, about the only sport that we had was just getting an old ball out there and my bat and go to work and play with it.
Ask some questions. Did you live through a flood? Describe it.
Yes, I went through the 49 flood. I was in school. We got trapped over near Petersburg, and it took us several days to get home. My grandfather, I remember, we crossed bridges and up and went down over the mountain. It was quite a time getting home. But we finally made it, and everybody was concerned where we was at. In the 85 flood, I was working, and I got stranded away from home again. And almost all the 7 counties I had worked in had suffered a lot of damages to the roads, bridges, and buildings and stuff. It just, I would have to say the flood that we just went through in '96 here was nothing compared to the ones I saw in '85 and '49.
Did you have electricity? What did you do at nights?
What I do what?
What did you do at nights?
Well, we didn't have electricity at my grandmother's, but we did up in the house. But when electricity come on, it was awful hard to get my grandparents to understand that this was something that they was going to have to give up, and to look to this electricity as another change of life for them. And it was awful hard for them to give up those old kerosene lights. I can say I probably did something that a lot of people haven't did. I've studied when I was in school with kerosene light, but when I got when they finally accepted the fact that the electricity was here and to make a use of it, it really changed their life and mine too.
What style of clothes did you wear?
Clothing really hadn't made a lot of changes during the years. Some of our styles and some of our different type clothing and stuff has changed some, but our clothes and our dress mode and stuff for Sunday was all stayed about the same. There hadn't been that much greater change in clothing.
What type of sports were there? What type of sweets were there?
Well, basically as today. But you know, I can remember when I was small that my grandparents and my parents looked forward to when they could tap sugar trees and make maple sugar, and then they'd plant sugar cane and stuff, and they all get together and have what they call taffy pull. And these things have been forgotten about and gotten away from. But you know, that was basically a good time for all of us, and we could get together and make sugar cakes and stuff out of it.
What type of books were there?
Well, Jodie, when I was in that one schoolhouse, they didn't have many books, and I used to sit and listen to the teachers as they would teach the 1st to the 8th grade, and I wanted to learn more and more and learn it faster, but we didn't have books. When I got over to high school, I found out that they had a library, and I can tell you this, I did spend a lot of time in it with the books. I tried to study and try to keep up with them.
What were animals like?
Well, the most important thing I can remember back when I was small was I was impressed with the way that people took care of their horses and stuff. Horses was an important part of their life. Back then they could use a horse to go places and visit people, and then they could take the horse and go out and plow their fields and stuff with them. So the horse was a very important animal to them. The cow was an important thing because from that cow they could get milk, make cheese and stuff, and it really was important to them to see the horses and the cows. And there was hogs that they would raise and butcher and stuff. They raised a lot of their own meats and stuff. They didn't run to the store and get them. They raised them.
What were the people like?
Well, I would say that the people back then were much different then than they are now, because they were much closer. You get home of the evening and you do your home chores and stuff that they'd give you to do. Well, when evening came and it was time to go to bed, one thing you did do, you all got together and we had family prayer and stuff before we went to bed. And even some of the people that I used to visit and go home and stay with when I was in high school and stuff, I was impressed to find out how many of those people were doing the same thing, that they would take their children and set them down and have a family Bible study with them and prayer before they let them go to bed.
Were there crayons and markers and stuff like that?
Yeah, our crayons were about almost the same as they are today. They really haven't made an awful lot of improvement on our crayons, probably the coloring stuff, but markers to me have made a tremendous amount of improvement during the last year, and you're very fortunate to have the type markers that you have today to work with.
What kind of jewelry were there?
Well, about the same as they have today, a lot of costume jewelry and stuff, and you didn't see when you went out with a girl on a date, you may see some jewelry, but there wasn't much jewelry and makeup as there are today. Sometimes we look at some of these and ask ourselves, well, we're overdoing it. It was something back at one time to look and see fellows have wristwatch on, and some of them had the pocket watches that their parents had used, or their grandparents.
Now this was Chastity Sykes that I interviewed, and Miss and me on Jodie Sykes. Thanks.